Welcome, everybody. We're just waiting for participants to join us.
Gostovati ćemo smisliti.
Good. I think we'll probably make a start. And any late arrivals can join us. So welcome everybody to this high-level stakeholder forum for the MINAGRIS project. This is our fourth stakeholder forum, I think, for this project. Previous ones have been in collaboration with our sister project, Papillon. As you can see from the title, we're going to look today about the impact of ecosystem services and sustainability, and we're going to present some results and some policy recommendations. But most importantly, we would like your feedback, because these forums are an occasion for you to ask questions so that we have a process of iteration to understand what your feedback is. It's quite a busy programme, so I'm not going to say a lot more. Ildiko will give some scene setting for the project before we go into the details. A few housekeeping things. Please turn off your cameras and your microphones. We are recording this, so just be aware of that. And there will be questions. We can have the questions at the end of the presentations. There's a Q&A session. But meanwhile, please do add any questions in the chat, and we can coordinate those towards the end of the project and hopefully have a good discussion. So without further ado, I shall hand over to Ildiko. Just as a reminder, please, to turn off your microphones. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ildiko.
Thank you very much, Julie. Good morning, everyone. This is Ildiko Hem from FIBL Austria. I'm also leading a working group of sustainability analysis and assessment. And I'm happy that you could all join our today's stakeholder forum. As Julie already mentioned, this is really about to inform our stakeholders on the impact of micro and nanoplastic on ecosystem services and in general sustainability results. This is not only to inform, we also drafted some recommendations, and we would like to receive your feedback on those, that at the end of the project, which is very soon, we can give that further to the relevant policymakers. For those who are not familiar with our MINAGRIS project, I would like to give a short introduction to this. I hope you can all see my presentation. So MINAGRIS stands for micro and nanoplastics in agricultural soils. Just to let you know, I cannot see you, so if Julie and Charlotte can let me know if there is anything technical in. Okay, so what is MINAGRIS about? MINAGRIS aims to improve the soil health by assessing the effects of micro and nanoplastics, mainly in agricultural ecosystems, and of course giving guidelines, giving support for a safe and economically viable European food system, which starts already in agriculture. In MINAGRIS, we use a multi-actor approach to engage stakeholders, just like today, and identify needs, improving farmer and citizen awareness, which is very important. And we would like to contribute for reducing plastic contamination. This is an EU-funded project funded by the Horizon 2020 program. The project runs from 2021 till this year, September, and the participants are 20 different project partners from all over Europe. I suggest you to visit our website, minagris.eu, where you can find many interesting information and maybe also follow us on social media. The approach in our project is we set up 11 case study sites all over Europe. You can see on the map from the southeast Greece to the northeast Estonia, to the west, on the west side Spain and the UK, to the east. We try to cover the geographical differences. And then other than these case study sites where we contacted at least 10 farmers directly, we also set up experiment field stations as we conducted also lab, pot and field experiments. For the sustainability assessment, our approach is we had a questionnaire for farmers, a couple of interviews, and also expert interviews. And of course, we also took soil samples from all 110 sites all over Europe. The survey that I'm focusing now was in personal interviews in 10 European countries. And we had several questions on environmental as well as on socio-economic aspects, which makes a holistic life cycle assessment, meaning a holistic sustainable approach. And results also show, among others, the amount and material of mulch films, irrigation pipes, and other plastics. I have to say here, we focus in our project on crops, agriculture, so we had to do some limitations on this. We had also questions about yield, cost, and working conditions, health, end-of-life status, very importantly, which can give us new sights on socio-economic relations also to the plastic products and their alternatives. Yes, not okay. And speaking about stakeholder engagement, in yearly workshops in those 10 different countries, we asked our stakeholders, especially here relevant, what are enablers and hinderers of a more sustainable soil management relating to plastics? You can see here some of the answers, but in both for enabling in a positive meaning and hindering in negative meaning, it came out that policy is very important. The lack of policy regulations and some supportive regulations would be welcomed. So that's why we really want to focus on how we can turn our results of our research to policy recommendations. Furthermore, in 2024, we also had a similar stakeholder forum where we asked participants, you might have been there, a special question, which factors shape success or failure of policy instruments? If it's a regulation, a mandatory instrument or a voluntary instrument for agri-plastics in your country. And the three most mentioned answers were from a multiple choice list: knowledge or lack of knowledge and effective dissemination, cost of implementation, and time needed until positive changes can be observed. That means for me, and also maybe the fourth one is interesting, weak and strong monitoring and enforcement. For me, it's a clear message for policymakers. Hope you are some of you are also here. Establish cost and time efficient policy instrument and speak about them and monitor them. That's the most important takeaway from this one. And now, speaking about stakeholder engagement, we would like to engage you. So, and ask you some questions. It would be really great if you could either scan this QR code with your phone, or on computer, you can look up this menti.com page and enter the code. Hopefully you can do that. I also wanted to enter it. And there will appear some questions, and I'm coming to that. Sorry, I'm also going with you alongside. I hope you all had a chance to take the QR code or the code. I'm not sure if Charlotte, if you could at least enter the menti.com code into the chat, then I can change the screen. Oh, perfect. Sorry, I was not able to see the chat. And I'm just sharing with you this. You already found at least 7 respond. I'm just sharing the screen again. Okay, at the moment we have 18. You can see it is basically statistically interesting to see who is participating today. A lot of researchers and also some industry representatives, farmers organizations, very nice. And we see what the other category goes. Okay, then if you're ready, then we go to the next question. This is an open-end question. Please provide examples of any best practices for regulations, policy instruments, voluntary arrangements, should it be regional, EU, or globally, working related to agri-plastics. If something comes to your mind that this is working in my region, in my country well, or I just read about that, then please provide examples for us that could help our work, and also to screen what the knowledge on this is at the moment. Just take a second to think about it. I just like to have a feedback that you received the question. You can see the question on Menti. Charlotte or Julie, is it viewable for you too, right?
Yeah, yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, if you can think of any examples of agri-plastics related regulations. I know it takes a while to type in everything. Some responses are coming already, so just giving a little bit more time. Regional, EU-wide, or globally seen. You can still go on with writing. We will capture that, but here are already some answers. Adivalor, fertilizing products regulation, very nice. FEO, voluntary code of conduct. Swiss private organic regulations. REACH. Okay, a Vorarlberg regional one, very nice. National collection and recycling schemes in several European countries. Yes, not in all of them. Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Feel free to finish your sentence and send it to us. But we go to our last question, which is a multiple choice question. Which phase of the agri-plastic product life cycle, from design, production, and usage and removal, end-of-life management. Plus, I added also some regulations of biodegradable plastics or regulation of plastic chemicals, and tracking and monitoring. What do you think? Which of these are needs the strictest regulation? Maybe at the moment, you can choose up to 3 of the list to limit somehow, but it would be really nice if you could answer those. Think about it for a second. The answers are coming. I just don't want to influence those who haven't answered yet. So think of the whole life cycle and some other topics. What do you think now? Basically at the beginning of this supportive event. Okay, I can show you the responses. Maybe it's not surprisingly that end-of-life management, you think the end-of-life management is which requires the strictest regulation, but also the regulation of plastic chemicals and regulation of biodegradable plastics are in the top 3. So it's like, yeah, let's keep coming. Interesting. So again, a message for policymakers where to try to work the quickest in which topics. Okay, thank you very much for this nice collaboration. And okay, sorry, I closed this. I take it back and the presentation goes back to you, Julie.
Thank you, Ildiko. And just to say, if you need to add in any more examples or any more thoughts about the life cycle regulation, please put them in the chat, because we can look at those later. It's my pleasure now to introduce Baba Peters from DG Environment, who's going to present some information about the soil monitoring law, but specifically with respect to soil plastics. Babo, are you going to stay around till the end of the meeting for questions?
Yes, I can.
You will be. Okay, that's great. Perfect. Thank you. So over to you, Babo, and thank you very much.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Bavo Peters. I work in the soil team in DG Environment, and our small team is in charge of the implementation of the soil monitoring law and recently also the new soil monitoring law. So I will briefly present you the main relevant parts and the possible links that I see in relation to micro and possibly also nanoplastics. So first a bit of context, where does this new directive comes from? It's still part of the implementation of the European Green Deal, and it follows from the adoption of the biodiversity strategy in 2020, which in turn announced a new EU soil strategy that was finally adopted in 21. And that soil strategy, next to more or less 80 non-binding actions on all forms of soil policy, also included legally binding new legislation, and the Commission in the end adopted the proposal in 23, and the directive itself was adopted end of last year and entered into force on the 17th of December of 25. So there are in general 3 main building blocks in the legislation, but I will focus mostly on this one, which is on monitoring and assessment of soil health. So through the soil monitoring law, member states will have a legal obligation to monitor soil health and assess soil health throughout their territory. They will have to do that on all types of soil, so not only agricultural soils, also urban soils, forest soils, etc. So all the territory has to be covered. And they will have to monitor all aspects of soil degradation. To do that, they will have to establish first soil districts, and soil districts serve mainly administrative purposes, and they're quite important for the governance and the implementation of the whole legislation. Within each soil district, member states will have to establish soil units. So these serve mainly statistical purposes, and they should be rather homogeneous units or areas of land or soil. And member states then have to allocate to each soil district at least one or more competent authorities. Once that is done, the member states will have to start and establish their soil monitoring framework, and they will have to monitor a couple of mandatory and also optional soil descriptors. I will come back to that. Those descriptors are listed in an annex of the directive, which also contains a couple of soil health criteria for each descriptor that will have to be respected and met. In a separate annex of the directive, all the methodologies for analysis are explained. Also, how member states should exactly decide on the location and the number of the sampling points, and how the different descriptors should be analyzed. For the rest, the Commission will provide support to member states to help them with that monitoring and assessment, and we will continue to do that through the Lucas Soil Survey, which is a monitoring survey which the Commission already implements since 2009. We will also further refine and improve remote sensing products from the Copernicus Land Monitoring Service. And the Commission will also set up a digital soil health data portal, which should bring together all the monitoring and assessment data collected by the member states, but also by the Commission. And in the end, member states will have to monitor and assess soil health always in regular cycles of 6 years. And as usual, they will also have to report all the data and the results to the Commission and the EEA. So here it's maybe a bit too small, but you see the list of mandatory and optional soil descriptors. Especially the soil contamination aspect is probably relevant for the topic of this meeting. So I will now zoom in a bit on the topic, or how the topic of diffuse soil contamination is covered within the directive. Diffuse soil contamination should be monitored through the general regime that I just explained, so through stratified random sampling. The directive contains two options. So there's an option, the so-called Part B, where contamination should be monitored on all the sampling points in the member states, so on 100%, which is quite demanding, probably also in terms of cost. The directive lists a whole number of heavy metals, which should be monitored everywhere, and member states should also monitor organic contaminants, but they have the freedom to select those organic contaminants. There's also a second option, the so-called Part C, where member states should monitor soil contamination, but only on a limited number of points, so a subset of their total monitoring framework. And there the directive says that they should monitor the PFAS group, but again, freedom to select which PFAS exactly. They should also monitor pesticides, and of course, they can always go beyond and select other contaminants to be monitored. Because this leaves a lot of flexibility to the member states, the Commission was also asked to provide some guidance for these decisions to be made by member states. And for that reason, the Commission will adopt an indicative list of soil contaminants by June of next year. The member states can hopefully then use that list to make their decisions and to select the contaminants that will be monitored. The only place in the whole directive where there is a reference to microplastics and nanoplastics is in a specific recital 52. And this recital was put there mainly because it was requested by the Parliament. It recognizes that microplastics and nanoplastics can pose a risk to soil health, also to agricultural production, and that it is essential that member states, or that the directive allows member states to monitor microplastics and nanoplastics. So it's quite a vague and non-binding provision, I would say, but it stresses the importance of monitoring. To be complete, it's maybe less relevant, but in the context of microplastics, but there's also a specific chapter on the management of contaminated sites. Contaminated sites in the directive are defined as sites with point source anthropogenic contamination, where probably microplastics and then nanoplastics rather fall under the category of the diffuse soil contamination. But here member states have an obligation to identify potentially contaminated sites based on a list of potentially contaminating risk activities within 10 years. And subsequently, they will have to ensure that the potentially contaminated sites are investigated. If contamination is found on these sites, the site-specific risks need to be assessed. And when there's unacceptable risks, the member states need to ensure that the necessary risk reduction measures are taken on these sites. Member states also have an obligation to establish a public register, which should present all the data about potentially and contaminated sites at site level, and also online and free of charge. And for the rest, member states also need to ensure that the public is involved in the decisions that are being taken, and that they can also correct or provide information in the register where needed. So coming to the end, it's maybe a bit small, but this is the timeline that we're currently following for the implementation. So in the meantime, the directive has entered into force on the 16th of December, not the 17th, as I said in the beginning. We also set up a first regular exchange with member states already, and we're currently working hard to adopt or to prepare the first drafts of different guidance documents, and the first one will be adopted before the end of the year, and we'll explain how the soil monitoring framework should be set up, so how member states should decide on the location of the monitoring points. It's important to say that this guidance is non-binding for member states. By June 27, then, the Commission will adopt an indicative list of soil contaminants to be monitored. And that's mainly our colleagues in the GRC that are now developing a methodology to prioritize the contaminants that should be put on that list. And then there's a whole suite of other support and guidance documents that we will have to adopt in the future. So first, in the beginning of the timeline, main obligations are rather on us, on the Commission. Member states have 3 years to transpose the directive into national legislation and have to do that before December 28. And then gradually, after transposition, of course, more and more obligations will fall on the member states, and mainly through different soil monitoring cycles. So that was it for me. Happy to take your questions now or after or at the end of the meeting. Thanks.
Many thanks, Paavo. That was extremely informative. Thank you. I think if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and then we'll address them at the end of the meeting, and then we can keep to our schedule. And can I remind speakers now from MINAGRIS to please keep within your time limit. Now over to the substance of the day, which Ildiko is going to present about the sustainability results. Over to you, Ildiko.
Thank you, Julie. So we all know that agricultural plastics contribute to improved productivity, resource efficiency, and some other positive impacts, but they also poses potential risks to the ecosystem services and overall sustainability. That's why we try to assess everything to see an overall holistic picture. And our methodology in this assessment of sustainability was to collect high quality primary data, which was not existent so far. From our 11 case study sites, don't forget, one case study site contains at least 10 farmers. So we had 110 farmers to ask for their 2 fields each. So we had basically data from 220 fields in whole Europe. That means also diverse climate regions and diverse production system and diverse crop types. What we did is we assessed the environmental impacts using the life cycle assessment, LCA, with European Union's supported environmental footprint, EF method, and also from IPCC, this global warming potential 100. These 2 methods contain 17 environmental indicators. I will show that later on, but I explain you that we set up scenarios for at least 12 different crops, which means we set up scenarios for LDP using, I want to mention for mulching films. Why mulching films? Because in our initial surveys, it figured out that the most used agroplastic products among our 110 case study farmers, mulching film was the most used product. So that's why we focused on mulching films. So we set up scenarios for LDPE mulching films with different end-of-life scenarios, like incineration, but industrial incineration, not on the field, be careful, end-of-life, recycling, and living on the field, which is not good, but this is a scenario, real scenario. Exactly, and we also use biodegradable mulch film, and we have scenarios for organic material. We took straw representing all the other organic materials. And this life cycle assessment, just a second, go back actually, was complemented by modeling of plastic emissions to soil. And importantly, it was complemented by a socio-economic assessment using 7 indicators. And of course, we set up synthesis for soil ecosystem services. We set up an impact matrix. Okay, next one, please. Yes, the life cycle assessment, you can see in blue the 17 impact factors, what we used. Some of them might be more familiar to you, some of them not, but this was given. And just to imagine how we did the scenario analysis. On the left in green, I know it's very small, but we have a lot of data. For example, you can see scenarios for tomato in organic and in conventional cultivation. And you can see this was tomato in greenhouse, but we have also scenarios for open field. And you can see, for example, the first one is with LDP mulch film without irrigation, without mulch film without irrigation, which is not really realistic, but to compare the scenarios, we needed it. And there are some different end-of-life options and mulch film and so on. Next one. So the results in this LCA, concentrating now on environmental factors, it said depends on the crop. So it's really crop dependent, which is the best scenario related to environmental impact. We also analyzed the mulch materials and of course, throughout these 17 impact categories, we got a differentiated picture. So we cannot say that this or that mulch materials is the best in all the impact categories. That's why it's important not to choose only one impact category, but to see the whole picture. Then we saw that there might be some key advantages for biodegradable materials were not fully captured. As there might be that microplastic accumulation is more in conventional plastic than in biodegradable plastic, sorry, and this needs further research. We also, at the end of our assessments, we would like to give priority to prevention of microplastic release into the environment because we are sure it harms the environment and it is irreversible. Next one. So in this MINAGRIS assessment framework, which we set up, basically the biopolyester starch, biodegradable mulch, which is not common yet, gives the best environmental performance, particularly regarding climate change impact and fossil resource depletion and toxicity related impacts. The second best would be the PBAT and starch combination, which is better than the conventional plastic, but because of its fossil-based PBAT content, it is a little bit less performing as biopolyester starch. And LDPE plastic was at the moment on the third place. But that was only an environmental factor. Next one, please. As I mentioned, we complemented that with socioeconomic assessments. We choose here 7 factors after research and expert interviews. This was profitability, security of supply of agri-plastic inputs, labor hours saved through using agri-plastics, worker acceptance, social acceptance, which is different, risk management, and access to end-of-life services. And based on these factors, we came to the conclusion that this one depends rather on the plastic material. If you remember, the environmental factors depended rather on the crops for which production method is used. Here it really depends on the plastic material. Yes, don't forget to long-established local practices, which also determine the level of micro nanoplastic contamination. And here the ranking, let's say, the high socioeconomic performance gave biodegradable mulching. Then the option without mulching gives the lowest socioeconomic risk. Of course, it's not always realistic. We are aware of that. And the third one would be straw representing all organic mulching materials. Next one. Yes, all these results, the environmental and the socioeconomic factors, were integrated in the so-called decision support tool, AgriPerst, to see the whole picture. This is a farm-level sustainability assessment tool. This evaluates, as I said, environmental, economic, and social implications of using agriplastics or alternative materials in agriculture. We aimed that this support tool supports a balanced decision-making beyond these single issues that we only concentrate on yield or only on cost. We would like to consider trade-offs and synergies, and that's why we put together with colleagues from the Danish Technical University, Amila Abenayaka, and my team in Fibel, Austria. We put together this tool, which has its limitation. At the moment, is not fully included the unintentionally added plastic like compost, which is a big important factor, and additives, but we are still working on it to improve this tool with also with those factors. You can download this tool free from our website, and is available in 9 different languages. Next one. Coming already to the ecosystem services. It was in MINAGRIS project, we set up a lot of experiments and we have a lot of results, technical results from our lab, pod, and field experiments. And in this impact matrix, we tried to have everything in one table, in one database. We set up different categories. In gray on the top, you can see type of services, which is the supporting or regulating service of ecosystem services, then which kind of benefits it delivers, what kind of plastic was in the experiments. It says in the legend that we used LDPE, PBAT, and starch-based plastic. Then the plastic concentration was different from 0.01% up to 1%. Then we had experiments without any pollutants, with albendazole, it's an antibiotic, and with pyraclostrobin, it's a pesticide. We had, as I said, pod, field, and lab experiments in different soil types. We had sandy clay loam soil. We had only clay loam soil, and we had loamy sand soil, because we figured out that some experiments give different results with different soils. Next one. That you can imagine how this impact matrix looks like. I just put some snapshots, but it's a big table where you can filter for all the categories. That means you can filter for a specific plastic type, like I did here for starch-based plastic. I filtered all the negative effects. That means you can see there are different plastic concentration, but in red you can see all the negative effects. The list is not complete, it goes down. You can see the experiment durations, soil life, if it was involved, and if it's statistically significant. Next one. You can do the filtering for PBAT, plastic of course, and for RDPE also. You can capture that way all the effects we had in our 5-year MINAGRIS project. Next one. And not only talking about negative effects, it also has positive effects. In green, you can see, I know it's very small, but at the end of the project, this will be also public. You can see among the benefits, for example, it's nitrogen cycling. It also contributes positive effects to this in some experiments, in some scenarios. Yes, the conclusions of this sustainable assessment, which was a very short summary, that the results highlight that there's a further need for integrated, context-specific, as I said before, sustainability assessment, a holistic sustainability assessment, improved methodological frameworks, because our framework can be developed further as well. And here it comes supportive policy and market conditions for alternatives, because it has to be sustainable alternatives on the market. And again, it's important to mention advanced monitoring and tracing methods. It could be use very modern technology to improve the understanding of micro and nanoplastic distribution and accumulation in soils, because here it lacks on research and data. And I wanted to mention as last point that you can see all our results in our public report, which was already submitted to the European Commission. And once we get back, then it will be available on our website. Thank you very much. Julie, back to you.
Thank you, Ildiko. Lots to digest there. I see there's one question in the chat. If you please, others, add your questions, and then Ildiko can address them later. We're going to move on swiftly to the next short summary, which is Sarah. I'll let you introduce yourself, Sarah, because you don't seem to have your name on the slide. So yeah. Sarah's going to talk about the best available techniques reference document, which is one of our key deliverable outputs. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining this meeting. So, Sarah Guerrini from Novamont, a partner of MINAGRIS project. In this brief communication, I will explain to you what is BREF. BREF is a report which aims to put together the data from the MINAGRIS project, the surveys we carried out in MINAGRIS project, together with the literature, in order to provide best available technique reference document, with the aim to help technician and standardization working group, but also, I would say, the main stakeholder of plastics in agriculture. So at the end of this work, I'm going to illustrate briefly the survey we carried out with the most important stakeholder of the sector, and I'm going to illustrate to you the best available techniques that we drafted with the aim to reduce the spreading of microplastics in soil. So next slide, please. Okay, sources of BREF, I've just already said this, where all the data comes from. Basically, they are scientifically based, and the results from the project. To the next, please. In this survey, we sent out over 30 questionnaires to main stakeholders in different categories, and we got 19 questionnaires back. But still, these questionnaires are basically putting together industries and organizations. and also policymakers, which play a role in dealing with plastics and microplastics. You can see here the composition of the different type of stakeholder. So basically, industry plays a big role, and international association. With international, I mean European, based in Brussels association. We also had the European Commission. We had DG Agri and DG Envy participating. Okay, to the next one. The aim of the questionnaire was, well, we had different aims, but basically we wanted to know what was the perceived knowledge on use and end of life of agri-plastics and presence of micro and nanoplastics in soil. Okay. Basically, the knowledge gap we identified were related to the lack of adequate statistics numbers concerning the especially end of life of plastics in agriculture. And in microplastics, obviously, there's not enough data to map the presence hotspots of microplastics in European soils. So what is important to have reliable data on the use of agriplastics, the type of plastics which are used, and where they end the life, and if they can be recycled. And this is also important at the end of life, specifically for hotspot of microplastics, to better link the source of secondary microplastics in soil to the source of these microplastics. And also we, regardless of the fact that MINAGRIS has developed a very efficient internal method to analyze microplastics, still having reliable method, standardized method to analyze microplastic is a point. Okay, next one, please. Regarding the end of life, we asked which are the main challenges for agriplastics, and basically, again, the need of dedicated collection system and collection is critical. They're not effective or standardized collection systems emerge as, so the end of life emerge as one of the key problems in dealing with plastics, as well as probably a necessity of having a better design for these plastics, which basically goes together with the end of life. If you have a good eco design of your agroplastics, it will be easier then to retrieve them and to manage them. Another aspect which turned out to be quite sensitive is and emerge among especially the industrial and the association was the lack of dedicated infrastructure for these end of life, the poor quality of collected plastics, especially some types of plastics in agriculture may be particularly dirty. And also recycling is difficult. And again, one point which was quite important is that managing recycling agri-plastics can be expensive. Next one. We asked which are the most difficult plastics to manage, and 2/3 categories of plastics came out as clearly the most difficult. So mulch films and nets and wraps. I would add to nets and wraps also clips and wires. We asked then, going back to what Ildiko was saying and what was asked to the growers, which are the alternatives to improve the end of life. And one of the clearest alternatives coming out from our survey was biodegradable and compostable materials can be an alternative. Again, you see the bigger the letter R, the higher number of answers we had. Increase of mulch film thickness for better removal, improve collection and recycling, implement collection and EPR alternative materials, and also awareness and communication action are seen as important. Again, in this survey and overall in the project, in the survey to growers, it emerges that there's not obviously a silver bullet, but is a very complex topic that we need to assess via multi-actor and collaborative type of synergies. Okay, to the next one. So we were asking precisely if to what extent the participants agree that biodegradable and compostable application could be considered part of the solution. And the score was quite high because we had some close-ended questions in which the range of numbers was going from 1 to 5. So the average score here was 3.95. So biodegradable and compostable materials are part of the solution. And we ask what if they agree that reduction of use in plastics in agriculture could help to reduce accumulation of microplastics in soil. And here we had a value which is around the intermediate value, but but is not extremely high. So yes, reduction of use of plastics might not be one of the key points for agriculture. To the next one, please. And then we ask what is a perception, what is known about the sources of microplastics in soil. And here, three categories of possible sources emerge, and they are you can see other sources. So it's quite clear, 27%, that there are general sources coming from the environment, but improper management of littering, 24%, is a cause. And again, organic fertilizers. So organic fertilizers such as digested compost appear to be one perceived source of microplastics. Okay, the next one. And which are the solutions to reduce microplastics? You can see in red we asked 3 solutions for each respondent, and you can see the bars in red are the, let's say, the best solution as comes out from this survey. So improve waste management and implement collection and EPR schemes. And again, decrease, regulate, ban of certain products. Here, the certain products were mainly oxo-degradable materials, and then use of biodegradable alternatives. So these are the 4 main solutions which together can help in reducing the microplastics in soils. Okay, the next one. Based on all the literature surveyed, the results of the project, the results of our surveys to growers, to general stakeholder of the sector, this is still work in progress. This is a deliverable of the project. We drafted 7 best available techniques. So techniques which can help in reducing the amount of microplastics reaching the soil. I'm not going to go through this very complex and long description, but I'm just reading for you the 7 best available techniques. So the first one is to reduce the use of plastics. Anyhow, these seem to be a way. Dedicated collection and traceability system is important, together with BAT4, improve recycling quality and circularity. BA3 again tackle the importance of avoiding improper disposal, including burning and including leaving materials in soil. Next slide. And then we got BAT5, use of certified biodegradable mulch films. This appears as quite clear in the project, in the literature, and in the answers from the responses of the survey, general survey. Promote biodegradable coatings for fertilizer. This matches also with the fact that the fertilizing product regulation in 2024 released the delegated act in which there is a clear request, an obligation to use biodegradable coating for certain types of fertilizers. And again, BAT7 compostable accessories for agriculture, which are basically the group of accessories with nets, clips, wires, which are particularly difficult to remove because either too dirty with soil or organic matter or entangled with residues of crops. So this is all, and if you got questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was great. As usual, please put your questions in the chat. We've got half an hour left, everybody, and we would like to have a discussion at the end. So I'll move on very quickly to Esperanza, who's going to talk about the key messages from the project. Over to you, Esperanza.
Thank you very much, Julie. Good morning. Well, good afternoon now, everybody. I'm glad to see you all. So I'm going to talk about some of the key messages. We are still working on them. Those are preliminary. So the next one, please. So the fact is that we have microplastics as pollutants. So they are pollutants found in the soil. That is a constatation. And the sources of microplastics, we have different sources, as already has been mentioned during this session. And this accumulation of microplastics exists in the soils, so that is also a fact. And the problem is escalating. We don't have yet methods of remediation. So microplastics of today are the microplastics of tomorrow. That is also a constatation. Plastisphere, so the film that is formed over the plastics exists, and over them there are microbial communities, and they have potential different effects. The next one. Microplastics interact with other soil pollutants. That is a constatation, and there is an amplification of their effects. The next one. Plastic effects depend on plastic type, co-pollutants, and soil type health. So that's why we need to be very precautious. Microplastic impacts on soil and soil ecosystem, here we just briefly. So they interact with pesticides and veterinary medicines that are found in the soil, often co-occurring with plastics in agricultural soil. So they treat together, co-occur, and they interact, changing their persistency, and they produce impacts. Impacts also in some cycles like nitrification and fertility. Both experiments showed that microplastics, LDPE and PBT, can increase soil water repellency, particularly in sandy loam soil. Plastics influence earthworm, insects, and soil microorganisms with consequences for ecosystem processes like nutrient cycling. That is also a constatation. Microplastics can impact plant growth and functioning with or without the presence of agrochemicals and drought conditions. So that is also a fact. Plastics affect soil diversity. And these effects were further exemplified with our experiments, precisely nematodes acting on bacteria, soil bacteria. Healthy soils with high microbial diversity and less exposure to additional agro-environmental stress may be more resilient to plastic contamination. So, biodegradable plastics are not necessarily safer. That is also a constatation. So that's why we need to understand and to be precautious and to do more studies. There are monitoring and measurement gaps. Improved standardized measurement techniques are urgently needed. Risk assessment must take account of multiple contaminants. Additives, for instance. Major data gaps exist and plastic additives. Policy must account for complexity. There is no single solution. Decisions must consider environmental, social, and economic factors. Remediation and degradation solutions are necessary to develop better, cost-effective alternatives. So we need to be precautious. Okay, so that is from my side. Thank you very much. More key messages are present at the end of the project. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Esperanza. And now we're on to final brief policy recommendations from Ildiko, which are good. Ildiko is going to introduce the discussion as well. So Ildiko, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, to start up with the policy recommendations, let's see the policy landscape. And I want to mention here some very nice documents. We are very, very thankful to FAO colleagues and also our Luca Nisetto, who was the coordinator of Papillons, who they are also here today, and they produced several really relevant reports on this topic of agri-plastics. One of them, the latest one, is a review of the international and regional policy landscape for the management of plastics used in agriculture. These are all available publicly. And I just found that the Circular Plastic Alliance was relaunched just recently. This is a industrial stakeholders alliance, but it is supported by the EU. Then further documents from FAO from last year, State of the Research on the impacts of plastic pollution on soil health and crops, very important. And of course, the voluntary code of conduct from last year on the sustainable use and management of plastic in agriculture. And yes, we will see what's going on with the UN Global Plastic Treaty. Until now, the binding international regulation, it was not successful. Let's hope for the best. And this basically was also already very similar one introduced by Bavo Peters, and that was just from last year. A colleague put together the relevant policies, strategies, frameworks, and directives, regulations. Next one. Regarding the European regulations, you might all know the standards for non-biodegradable, basically the conventional plastic mulch foil, and the standard for biodegradable mulch films. In 2024, the fertilizing products regulation included soil biodegradable mulch films as soil improvers. That's an interesting step. And of course, recently last year, the EU soil monitoring law was implemented as introduced by Bavo Peters. Next one. Yes, I wanted to show here some examples, not all, some examples of unsustainable soil management, which is microplastic related, like the first picture, burning agri-plastics on field. I can tell you this is real also in Europe, in some countries of Europe. Also among our case study site farmers, we got sometimes the answers. If they don't see any other option for an end-of-life management, they just burn it on the field, which is one of the worst scenarios. Then this next picture shows the degrading of plastic mulch film. Of course, these mulch films have also a lifetime. Of course, it would make sense to use it as many times as possible, but we have to be aware of the degradation through the UV and other physical obstacles. And that means also that is a potential contamination for the soil. Sewage sludge as fertilizer in organic agriculture, go back just a bit. It is not used anymore, but it contains, as we heard, compost and sewage sludge, unfortunately, contains a lot of micro and nanoplastic. Polymer-coated fertilizers and seeds were also an issue because that was a direct contamination into the soil. And oxo-degradable plastics also pose a risk in the soil and in our environment. And fortunately, they are not allowed anymore in the EU, but some other places, yes. Next one, please. And now I wanted to show you the list of FAO again, exactly related to those problems I mentioned before. There are some some policy instruments against those problems. Regulatory instruments could be product bans or restrictions. For example, the oxo-degradable plastics were banned in the EU, but they are still available and used in the UK, for example. The restriction on marketing of non-biodegradable polymer-coated fertilizers, I just mentioned these pose a directive risk. These were restricted in the EU again. The next is restriction on agricultural practices. For example, application of biosolid as fertilizers. We have to be careful with them, not to put more microplastic in our soil. Then there are about instruments to regulate the plastic substitutes, plastic alternatives. For example, paper, hemp, straw, and biodegradable mulch films. This can have positive effects as well, but we have to be careful to assess them correctly. And of course, product design and standards. Already in the point 0, we have to think about the circular economy to be able to reuse and collect and recycle the materials. Next one. These were the regulatory instruments, and we have market-based instruments. For example, the extended producer responsibility, which can contain collection schemes, voluntary or mandatory. There are some very well working on voluntary basis in some European countries. It can also contain some disposal fees or deposit return schemes. So policymakers should think of those options as well. Taxes and fees gives us a financial instrument, for example, higher taxes on plastic products or lower taxes on sustainable alternatives. Environmental cross-compliance, which can be used already in the EU. For example, environmental conditions must be met before subsidies. Or as last mentioned was plastic credits. This is just like carbon credits works on this system. Next one. Yes, policy recommendations based on our findings in my MINAGRIS projects and relevant policy reviews. And we had also semi-structured interviews with stakeholders, with experts, and also considering the early policy recommendations a couple of years ago from MINAGRIS and Papillons. We came up with the following policy recommendations to think about. And based on our work on sustainability, we would like that to promote sustainable use and management of plastics in agriculture and their alternatives. And it comes importantly based on socioeconomic and environmental impacts. So it cannot be only focused on economic impacts, while strengthening capacity building, knowledge exchange, and awareness raising initiatives. Next. Support research. Like we researched that in many years, but we know that we still need further research. So please support research and innovation to develop and scale, that's also very important, sustainable alternatives to conventional agricultural plastics, that people have options to choose from. Establish incentives, here it comes again to financial one, and regulatory measures to support the design from the very beginning of the life cycle of the product, which can already influence the reuse, the recycling, and the material recovery. Next one. And regarding biodegradable and alternative materials, please ensure that market will be entered only for full biodegradable materials, which can depend on regional field conditions. As we know that in Northern Europe, conditions, temperature, and so on are different than in the Mediterranean. So this has to be taken into consideration because at the current standards, it's not really included. Consider effects of micro nanoplastic accumulation in the soil. I mentioned before that needs further research, and this is also for conventional and for biodegradable materials. A risk assessment has to be done, a holistic risk assessment. And very important, transparency. Please give us transparency for researchers at least, but of course it would be for the whole public. Transparency about plastic chemical additives and their impacts. We know from reports that there are more than 700 different additives used in plastic production, and some might be hazardous. Also in different amounts, but not even researchers, not to speak about the public, have full transparency about it. So it's really hard to assess plastic materials if you don't have this information. Next one. And something practical, it should be really interesting to set up a mandatory extended producer responsibility system with an effective collection system and proper waste management. So these are our suggestions. And now I would like to, again, to open your phone, this QR code or menti.com, or just return to your Mentimeter side, because I have two more questions. Exactly, thank you. Julie, can you take back, please, the sharing, because then I can share also.
Okay. Just do a little bit of moving around now, so that Ildiko can show the results of the Mentimeter. Thank you.
Sorry, somehow something happened. Again.
So if you've had a chance to go onto the Mentimeter again, take a look at the questions.
I'm trying. Somehow it's not working. Okay, can you see now my screen with the new question, which is basically an old question, but I would be interested after today's event if your way of thinking has changed regarding what is the highest priority for regulation. I hope you can see. Yes, we are receiving the answers. Please try to choose again 3 of these options. I hope you can see them. Yes, we are receiving responses. I give you some more time. Maybe still the same, but maybe you heard something today. What changes your choices? Just some more answers, please, because it could really help us and policymakers for future. If you have issues to access, the link is also, or the The code is also in the chat, but it's also shown here. Yes. Almost half of the people already answered. It would be very nice to receive a little bit more answers. Just don't want to influence those who haven't answered yet. You have to click on the submit if you have forgotten it. Okay, I start to show the responses. Since not everyone answered yet, it's hard to say, but again, end-of-life management is the absolute winner. So that's the highest priority, you think so? And the regulation of biodegradable plastics, regulation of plastics chemicals, and design of agri-plastics. So these are the most important topics for regulation. So if you finished, I open the last question. This is basically two questions. Again, an open end. We would be really interested. What do you think about the proposed policy recommendations? What I just did as last 7 recommendations. And if you have a topic on mind or an issue on mind, what you would really like us to request from policymakers. So tell us some ideas. Take your time to type in if you agree with the proposed policy recommendations and what other policy recommendations would you request.
If we could show the recommendations again, I think that might be helpful.
Yes. Just close it, just a second. Yes, I will.
Thank you. That's good.
Take your time. Yeah, we still have a couple of minutes for the end round because that would be our last question. We will capture all your answers and analyze it after the event. Maybe in the meantime, Julie, I can show this last slide. Why people are typing. Oh, sorry, not that. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. But I was going to suggest that we use the policy recommendations as a prompt for any questions now or any further comments. I think the questions in the chat have been addressed, but if you have any further issues you want to raise, pop them in the chat or put your hand up. Charlotte, I think you're going to moderate this session if we have some interested questions.
Yeah, hello everybody. We are very keen to hear from you now. So if you have any questions or if you'd like to turn on your camera and speak at all, you're very welcome to do so. I think as Julie says, the questions have been addressed in the chat, but I thought Ildiko Esperanza, it might be interesting to touch a bit more on Martin Collar's question around the kind of challenges potentially with certain biodegradable mulches. He's asked what exactly are the problems with the biodegradable mulches. I just wondered if you could expand a little bit. Hi, Esperanza.
Hi. Okay, thank you very much, Charlotte. Yes, of course. After doing several experiments with different types of soil, with different type of organisms, and different time of exposure and different concentrations, we can say that PBAT, fossil-based biodegradable mulch, is not very ideal. It's impacting the organisms, some of the organisms. Of course, we can go into detail, but then I invite Martin to go to the publications in the website. So it's very important to mention specifically the type of biodegradable plastic. And of course, we don't know all the ingredients. So we only know that it has PBAT. And it is...
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I've just seen as well that Luca Nizetto has made a comment in the chat, which I think is really apt and pertinent to the discussions we've been having. So he suggests that while the soil monitoring law is an important forward step, we need to be more ambitious potentially and understand just how severe and widespread plastic contamination is. And actually, making monitoring compulsory at national level is necessary and urgent. Could the MINAGRIS team respond to that? So obviously there are practicalities and concerns that perhaps farmers may have had and others may have had around this idea of compulsory monitoring at national and even regional level. Do you foresee any kind of challenges with achieving that?
If I may, I can start, and after the colleagues can continue. Yes, of course, I see challenges because there are already customs habits established. So then this needs to be accompanied by education. So together with this establishment, awareness and explaining why it's important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a kind of education and soil literacy piece there that's really important. Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else want to come in there? If not, then I'll move towards closing. We'd love to just briefly share news about our final conference that's coming up. So 16th of September, we are going to be in Brussels. So the full MINAGRIS team will be there. This will be our opportunity to share our final key messages and policy recommendations, among other things. So today you've seen a sneak preview of some of our preliminary results, but there's a lot more to come, a lot more that we'd like to share with you. We're also going to be premiering an animated explainer video, which hopefully will help with some of the literacy education side of things that Esperanza just pointed to. So please do register for the event. The website is on the screen at the moment. It's in person in Brussels, free to attend. We'll provide lunch and refreshments. And it is also available online for those who need to join remotely. So please do share this with your contacts and circulate it widely. And we look forward to hopefully seeing some of you there. So if anyone else has any further questions, please do shout now before we start to draw to a close. I know Ildiko is likely very busy still looking at the Mentimeter. Ildiko, did you want to come in again before we close?
I just would like to thank you, everyone, for this active participation. I think that's what stakeholder engagement is also about, that we have all our voices towards policymakers based on research results. And I'm very happy that we could have this event with the participation, and thanks for my colleagues who presented and facilitated this event. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well put, Ildiko. Thank you, everyone. It's been a great event, and we really appreciate the time you've all taken to listen and also to present. So thank you very much. And and just to say, this session has been recorded, so it will be made available online in case you'd like to revisit some of our recommendations and findings or share them further. Otherwise, we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you all at our final conference in September. Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.